Good evening and welcome to tonight's Unmasked conversation. My name is Afeni Grace. I am the program coordinator for the Harvey B. Gantt Center. For tonight's special conversation, we include the voices of experts on the impact and history of Black philanthropy, discussing both its cultural roots and contemporary characteristics. But before we dive in, please be sure to click that subscribe button below the screen for updates on all future Gantt Center programs. Also visit our website at ganttcenter.org to learn more about our mission and our upcoming campaigns and projects. Now, to better understand our audience's perspective of Black philanthropy, we currently have linked in our YouTube chat a 2-minute audience survey. Please take the time to complete the survey now. And of course, we love to see such great audience engagement. So please use that YouTube chat for any questions or comments you have throughout the evening. We will address the results of that audience survey and any audience questions in the second half of the program. Now, with that being said, please try to get any questions for our panelists in by 7:30. Now we're excited to welcome back tonight's moderator, Ms. Tiffany Capers. She brings 25 years of nonprofit and public sector experience to her role as Executive Director of Crossroads Corporation, after spending the last 11 years as the Teach for America Managing Director in Network Strategy and Public Affairs and Development. She also served as a Vice President at Foundation for the Carolinas, preceded by 14 years with the City of Charlotte. Good evening, Tiffany.
Hi, Afeni. Good evening. And thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to take part in the Gantt Center's Unmasked series again. I'm looking forward to tonight's Unmasked topic, Giving Black, what it is and what it is not. In addition to August being Black Philanthropy Month, it is also Black August, a month-long call for reflection, study, and action to promote Black liberation. When social justice and philanthropy meet, it creates a space wherein the people who are impacted by injustices become decision makers. The field of philanthropy becomes more accessible and diverse. Foundations are accountable and transparent, and donors act as social justice allies by contributing their money, their time, their knowledge, skills, and access to create change. Giving Black is a social justice act. It is not just giving while being Black, it is giving to Black causes, Black organizations, Black-led and Black-serving institutions working to address injustice, inequity, and exclusion. Join me in welcoming our panel as we remove the mask. First, we have Mrs. Kelly Davis. Kelly Davis is the Executive Director for the Thomas Davis Defending Dreams Foundation, serving as the liaison to connect the foundation to communities in Charlotte, Greenville, South Carolina, and Shelburne, Georgia. TDDDF was formed in 2007 as a catalyst that serves underprivileged children, with an emphasis on students in middle school. TDDDF has distributed more than $800,000 worth of aid since its inception. In 2018, Kelly was honored by UNCF as a Maya Angelou Women Who Lead honoree for her work with the foundation. She volunteers at her children's schools each week in the classroom and won Second Harvest Ted Hayward Award for Compassion in Action. The award was given for helping families and making sure children don't go hungry. Thank you for being a part of the panel tonight, Kelly.
Thank you so much for having me.
Next, we have Herbert A. Gray, founder of Life Enhancement Services, a firm that enhances the lives of individuals as well as communities by offering meaningful employment opportunities in 5 states: North Carolina, Tennessee, Louisiana, Georgia, and Texas. Herb seeks to create change in and outside of the business world. His philanthropy is far-reaching. He and his wife, Felicia, founded the Gray Golf Classic and have given the tournament's proceeds to several local organizations. Herb's objective is to compel others to fund the community's initiatives. We are glad you could be a part of the conversation, Herb.
Thank you. Glad I can be a part of it as well. Thank you for the invite.
And next on the panel, we have Valeda Fullwood. Valeda is the award-winning author of Giving Back, a 400-page hardcover book profiling stories of philanthropy among African Americans that was developed with photographer Charles Thomas. Giving Back, her first book, was named one of the 10 best Black books of 2011 and received the prestigious 2012 McAdam Book Award, which recognizes the most inspirational and useful new book for the nonprofit sector. In 2020, Valeda earned AbbVie's Trailblazer Award as a part of its 29th James A. Joseph Awards. Titled Giving Back, The Soul of Philanthropy Reframed and Exhibited, this exhibit is now traveling to college campuses, public libraries, cultural institutions, and museums nationwide. Welcome to the panel, Valeda.
Hi, Tiffany, thank you.
And Valeda, I think you also have a video you'd like to show that will help frame tonight's conversation.
Yes, thanks. To set the tone, there's a film short from the Soul of Philanthropy exhibit. It's called Full Circle, and it's narrated by Charlotte's Quentin Talley.
This is work in progress. A new generation paying homage. This is full circle. To those who came before us, giving back like ancestors gave back to community. For philanthropy is weighed in different ways than those of the European kind of standard. This seed was planted before landing on these shores. This is custom, tradition, culture preserved. Now the next generation will continue the legacy of creating our own support system with the intentions of being my brother's keeper. We are the soul, giving the mind time for family. We have always cared for one another by using our hands, creating opportunities for the love of mankind. For giving back takes treasure treasure, talent, and time. We are the spirit of Black folk dipped in tradition. So listen to the ancestors so the future will know the correct story. They, we, us are the root, reclaiming the truth, spreading generosity toward the future, led by example. In turn, our work comes full circle. This is work in progress. A new generation paying homage to those who came before us. This is full circle.
So coming full circle, Valeda, could you spend a little time telling us the difference between charity and philanthropy? Is there a difference?
For me, I don't see a difference. I see it all as philanthropy. I know sometimes the words, kind of mixing of words and the meanings, they're both founded in the word love. So I choose to embrace the most inclusive definition I can find, and love being the root of philanthropy and charity, and let that lead how I think about engage in philanthropy. I think that sums it up. I think Black philanthropy specifically has its own definition and traditions. And I think of that in a way, I always like to be clear because there are so many different connotations people have when they hear the word philanthropy, some good, some not so good. And I like to make the distinction about what I mean when I say Black philanthropy. I think about it in the way we think about Black food or Black music. I mean, Black people can cook a range of cuisines and sing a range of songs, but when we cook Black food or sing Black songs, it's rooted in a certain history and culture and tradition that shows up in how and why we give. And one example that specifically that comes to mind is when you hear Aretha sing or Marvin Gaye sing or Al Green sing. They may be singing secular songs, R&B songs, but you know it's rooted in the Black church and that experience. And I think that's true of Black philanthropy. When Black people give and engage in philanthropy, there is a certain way we show up that speaks to our traditions. And we have opportunities today to engage in new, innovative ways and take twists on those traditions of what we've been taught and perhaps observed growing up.
Thank you for that response. I had been doing some additional reading around philanthropy and charity. And so thank you for offering that perspective. In your response, you kind of hit on my next question. Why is Black philanthropy important?
I think it's important because oftentimes it's underestimated and discounted. So it's important to lift it up with months like this, Black Philanthropy Month, and conversations like tonight. Even in our own communities, we don't always recognize our giving as being philanthropy. And I think it's key that we own those traditions and recognize our giving as philanthropy and celebrate it and pass on those traditions to future generations.
Do you think there is a misconception about how much the Black community gives? Is there a misconception about whether we do give?
Yeah, I think probably my experience has been that, yes, there are lots of misconceptions and an underestimation of our giving. And a lot of it isn't captured in traditional ways or conventional ways in terms of data on our giving. So that underestimation could be understood. And part of my work is to help celebrate and tell our stories and capture the beauty of Black philanthropy.
Thank you. And so I'm curious, Valeda, how have philanthropic efforts changed due to COVID-19 and due to the death of George Floyd for you, given the many philanthropic pursuits that you are engaged in as an individual giving and as a person who's leading a lot of efforts? What's different now?
I just see heightened interest and curiosity about our giving. I see new members joining the giving circle that I'm a part of. People recognizing that one, in the pandemic and the impacts economically and health-wise on the Black community, that it really is incumbent upon us and even a responsibility to invest in work that addresses current needs and provides relief to people, but also is part of the rebuilding and thinking of the future, a future that's safer and more just. And certainly with George Floyd's murder, there is heightened interest and concern around social justice issues and how we can affect change through our philanthropy in our communities, both health-wise and economically and justice-wise.
Thank you. So Kelly, I'd like to turn to you. Why did you become a philanthropist? Valeda has mentioned a lot of the conditions in which we find ourselves as a community of people, Black or otherwise. What was motivating you to become a philanthropist and to become involved?
So growing up, I believe that I didn't really know what philanthropy was, and I didn't even know that it was happening around me. So my mom was always a giver. People in my family, they were always a giver. And I just thought that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to help other people. So in going to college, in meeting other people, in volunteering more and learning more about it, it just put something in me to want to help wherever I could. And of course, sometimes you have situations where people would take advantage of you and you don't know where to help and you don't know how to help. I fast forward to meet Thomas, and the first thing he talked about with us when we started dating and then into marriage was, I want to give back. I want to give back more. I want to do more. And with us being in that position, with him being an NFL player, you know, we could do it. We could give back. We started out small, and then it just kept growing and kept growing to us creating the Thomas Davis Defending Dreams Foundation. And there's nothing too big or too small that we felt like we couldn't handle when there was an ask of us in the community, and especially dealing with children. And that just pulls on your heart to make you want to help more and see the impact that you're having on kids.
So I think there is a misconception that one, only wealthy people can be philanthropists. I don't think that's true. Would you agree?
Definitely not true.
Definitely not. So the other misconception is that philanthropy is just a financial transaction. Could you speak a little bit to how philanthropy is more than just a financial transaction?
Absolutely. So one thing we have in the foundation, we try to put on fundraisers and try to have events to bring in funds to the foundation. And something that people always tell us boldly is, okay, your husband's an NFL player. Why can't you just pay for it? They say, you guys have the funds. Why can't you just pay for this building or this park or this whatever it is that you're doing? And what people don't understand is with this smaller organization, it's super hard to explain how much it takes to run and to give out for the different programs and the things that we do. Every single dollar that comes into the foundation, we put out. We don't have any kind of payroll. Nobody gets paid, even from me being the executive director on down to our board. We give every single dollar back out. So we're out there grinding to raise funds along with what we put into the foundation personally. And I think that a lot of people think that when you have an organization, a foundation, or you're giving back, that all you want is, and that's it. Of course, we want the dollar. We want to be able to do for these kids. We want to be able to do the scholarships and put these programs on. But being a hands-on volunteer is also important. We wouldn't be able to run the programs that we run for free for the community without our volunteers and without people giving back. So we've had to discuss and talk to people, and especially our parents of our Leadership Academy kids, on how important it is to volunteer and put your time into giving back. If we go and we do the grinding to raise the funds, then we absolutely need people every age to help give back. That's important, to give that time to come and help and put your hands, in the mix. And also, if you donate the dollars, you want to see also where your dollars are going. So we ask people, come out and help us whenever we're putting on an event or doing a program.
You raised two critical thoughts for me in your response. One is that oftentimes when you are donating and giving, you have an obligation to ask about the impact of your dollars, the impact of your investment. So again, being philanthropic also is an act of social justice because you are holding people accountable for the changes they are promoting, the changes they're saying they want to make. The other part of your comment, Kelly, kind of dovetails off of what Valeda was saying in terms of this notion of collectivism, this notion of community, this notion of being communal. That isn't a foreign concept to us as people of color, as Black people. This is what we've known, what we've always done. It's part of the reason why we're here, because we all got together at some point and decided, if I have a little bit, you have a little bit. So we can bring those values forward with us today. Now, the world has changed in the last 4 months. You and I were talking a little bit about children being at home for 4 months and how we're ready for seasons to change. But in this season of change with the pandemic and with the death of George Floyd, how has that changed your philanthropy?
Oh, it's changed it a lot. We were absolutely more focused on education and leadership programs and things for our kids that are in our program. We have a youth leadership academy, and we would teach them different sessions they would have on volunteerism. They would have sessions on personal hygiene. They would have sessions on how to deal with conflict. And we started to implement a little social justice and, letting them meet some of the community leaders that we have, some the police officers that we have, and the first responders that are in the community. And as things started changing even more around and they were asking us questions, we saw prior to the death of George Floyd how we needed to do more in that area. They don't understand what's going on. They're young, they're middle school kids, and they have a ton of questions. So even with our own children that are in our home, we were finding ourselves constantly having to explain why this was happening, and we don't have an answer to the why. So as a foundation, we started hosting more events for our kids to help answer some of those questions. So they could talk to some of the police officers that are in their community. So they could talk to some of the leaders that were around them and have their questions answered by people who are making those decisions and who are actively working in their community in that area. We think that's helped tremendously for the kids who are scared of the police, or for the kids who are scared to, ask for help when they need help because of the things that are going on. And I think that's huge. That's something that we need to understand. Of course, there's been a huge call for police reform since the death of George Floyd, but there are over 200 plus names and probably more than that beyond even George Floyd, where this has been going on for a long time. And so this youth now, I think, has the drive behind them to help enforce that change. So when they ask the questions, we need to figure out a way, if we can't answer them, to find answers to help them understand what's going on.
So by being in the position that you are as the TDDDF Foundation, you are helping to become an advocate. You're helping to bridge the gap and stand in the gap and help young people find their voice to get the answers they need. And again, this unusual set of circumstances we're finding ourselves in this dual pandemic of COVID-19 and racism. Before I ask Herb some questions, I want to ask each of you, and I asked Herb this question prior to us getting on the call. What was your first act of philanthropy? When was the first time you gave to a cause or to a nonprofit organization? Valeda, when was the first time you gave?
Well, it probably goes back to Girl Scouts. Is probably the first time I recall being conscious of being engaged in philanthropy and giving back time, talent, and treasure. Although I'd witnessed it around the family, and I'm sure had participated in all kind of volunteerism before then, I had consciousness around it as a Girl Scout, starting as a brownie. So 6 years old, 7 years old.
And Kelly, any early memories of your first giving?
I remember being a Girl Scout as well, but I believe it was high school where it really kind of dawned on me that, I want to do this more. We're raising funds, and we were raising funds for larger organizations, American Red Cross and the American Cancer Society. And we're doing all these big organizations. And then it hit me that there are smaller organizations that are doing work in the community too, who don't get as much funding. And that's when it really, kind of hit me in that high school area that this is huge, And that's when I decided, like, hey, whenever I have anything to do, time or money that I can give back, I'm going to definitely help and give back.
Thank you. So Herb, I have that question for you, but I also have another question for you. We know that the world needs charity, food, shelter, medical care, housing, technology, band-aids. The world also needs solutions to social and systemic problems, which is what philanthropy can also address. How do you choose to invest your charitable or philanthropic dollars?
Well, again, I guess every season or people move to different stages in their life, so they look at different things that differently depending on what's going on in their life, what's going on in the world around them. And so right now, my focus really is on two things. One, children in general. And so if I can help out with children in general, and then also those people who just almost have no hope, to even get through to tomorrow. So I'm looking at different layers of that. And so those are the two things I'm looking at now.
And have your philanthropic efforts changed due to the pandemic or the death of George Floyd?
Yes, I mean, I think that philanthropic endeavors, I don't know what one has to be a philanthropist, right? And I think that it was brought up earlier. I think that African Americans have been giving to each other for years. It just didn't have a title. It didn't have a social media page. But we've been doing something good for each other since time, right? And so I think that but in my book, I think that the change has really happened just for me since George Floyd. So I'm on in Washington, I'm on the Police Reform Commission. In Charlotte, I'm doing some things with youth, with Big Brothers, Big Sisters coming up. And so I have moved on to realize that I'm trying to work both, maybe with forces that traditionally have not been, you know, great alliances with African Americans, but also with forces to say, I want our youth to be better prepared for whatever challenges they may encounter.
Thank you. I think for me, my first act of giving was in church, tithes and offerings. I grew up in a very small church, and that was the first act of giving that I can remember growing up. We are going to shift in a little bit to a survey that our audience has been taking. So I have one other question, and we could give maybe a brief response to this one. Valade, I'm going to start with you to get your thoughts. What would be the result of effective and responsive philanthropy in Black communities? And what would be the effect of responsive philanthropy by Black communities?
Wow. I definitely think effective and responsive philanthropy with Black communities would be listening to the community and listening to people closest to the issues and concerns with a line of sight on issues and our community that people in ivory towers or elsewhere in the community may not see. And so I think that's where a huge opportunity to invest resources exists. And I think the second part of the question, can you repeat that again, Tiffany?
Yes, just a little bit of a twist. So the first part was responsive philanthropy in Black communities, and then the effect of responsive philanthropy by the Black community.
Right. I think relationships, within our community and philanthropy by our community built on relationships, trusted relationships, trusting relationships. And I think that would be so powerful and is very powerful when it occurs.
Awesome, thank you. So we are going to transition to our survey that our audience has been taking. And I think Afeni is going to have some results of that survey for us.
Yes, we're going to switch gears for a moment and discuss the results of the audience survey. Please keep in mind that these results are only based on our audience members who completed the survey. So our first question, is, do you consider yourself a philanthropist or have at least one philanthropist in your network? So, as you can see here, we have about 48% of surveyors who selected that they neither consider themselves a philanthropist or know someone who is a philanthropist. We have about 30% of surveyors who selected that they themselves consider themselves a philanthropist and also have at least one philanthropist in their circle. And we have about 22% who selected that they have at least one philanthropist in their circle. And no one selected that they consider themselves a philanthropist alone without having others in their circle who are also philanthropists. Our next question is, before tonight's conversation, how familiar were you with the history of Black philanthropy? As you can see here, we have about 44% of surveyors who are slightly familiar, 35% who are not at all familiar, 13% who are moderately familiar, and about 9% who are very familiar with Black philanthropy. Our next question is, based on your knowledge and experience, what has been your general perception of philanthropy in the Black community? Here we have about 48%, an overwhelming majority of surveyors who selected that they have a positive perception of philanthropy in the Black community. 30% who said that they don't know enough about Black philanthropy to kind of make that judgment. And about 22% of surveyors who selected that they do have a negative perception of philanthropy in the Black community. Our next question, and our final question, is what would you say is the most important aspect of Black philanthropy? Here we have a few assorted answers, but we have a majority of about 35% of surveyors who selected that it is the institutional development in Black communities, so such as putting money in churches and schools, etc. And then we also have 26% of surveyors who selected that it is the eliminating of barriers to equity and economic growth. We have 22% of surveyors who selected that it's the presence of Black leaders and influencers. And we have 13% who selected that it is the aid to improve individual and community hardships. So Tiffany, based on these survey results, was there something that stood out to you or the panelists?
To me, it didn't really stand out as a surprise. It sort of affirmed what I was thinking in terms of 34% feeling that philanthropy was giving to institutional development, churches, nonprofits with whom we've been familiar, maybe UNCF, maybe NAACP. I think that has been our tradition to give to institutions. And I think it has been our tradition to give to institutions that impact systems in a certain way. I do think, though, that the degree to which that need to give to institutions that impact systems, I think that is shifting and changing, and that'll be more intense, if you will, as we go forward. What does the panel think about any of the results you just saw in terms of understanding philanthropy or how philanthropy is practiced amongst some of our audience members? Anything stand out for you all?
I think too that sometimes we as a group, feel that a philanthropic act, the gentleman like it paid off at Morehouse, Robert Smith paid off that's philanthropic or something big on that monumental scale. But it's actually, could be a rallying of a group of people giving to a particular cause or something that, could be large or small. Or it could be a group of people saying, we're going to volunteer down here today, to change the lives of some people. I think all that kind of falls under philanthropic. And so when you really look at that, we really have a bigger philanthropic community than you would really understand, right? I think that we as black people, that's how we realize how we make it, right? Everybody's sort of helping each other out somewhere or another. So I think those numbers are bigger and broader than what they really are, right? If you break down what does giving back and philanthropic really mean.
I think Valeda, you and Kelly had a perspective as well. Valeda?
I was surprised, I guess, by some people's uncertainty or unfamiliarity with Black philanthropy. Again, like Herb mentioned, I think a lot of us experience it. I mean, it's in our DNA, it's all around us. And sometimes, like a fish in the water, you don't see the water. So I think, Tiffany, you mentioned at the start that this is Black August, and one of the defining aspects of Black philanthropy historically has been, it's been about giving for our own liberation. It's about giving for our power building. And I think increasingly it's important for us to decenter whiteness when it comes to philanthropy and not have it defined how it has been in the mainstream, and really to own what it means for us and what it looks like in Black communities. And since this is Unmasked, I mean, it's an opportunity to unmask our superpower as Black people in a Black community. Herb spoke about the power of collective giving and people coming together with time, talent, and treasure. And I always like to add the fourth T as testimony or truth. And there's power in that. And again, I think it's a force that more of us need to own the definition and see our own possibilities for being a philanthropist, however we define it. And again, I go with love of what it means to be human, which opens it up to everybody. And I'm excited about what this new era we're experiencing after the traumas of COVID and the police involved killings and just the historic traumas that we experience, just our deeper awareness of how we can come together as a community and how interdependent we all are and can create a new future.
I think that you definitely have to think about how we grew up and how, you know, you're told not to brag about your giving or brag about what you're doing, you know. And I think a lot of people may look at that as if I'm telling someone what I'm doing, that that's a bad thing. But we have to understand that it's good sometimes because it'll be a trickle down effect that your kids, that your friends, that your neighbors, that other people can see your giving and see what you're doing. When we used to have cameras around at different events that we had, we would hear people say, why do you have cameras, or why is the media there? Because then we'll see other people who have dollars that don't have anywhere to put those dollars. They can see what we're doing and say, hey, I want to donate money to that scholarship fund. Or we have, you know, people that are retired, people that may not have any dollars but have time, say, I saw what you guys were doing and I saw you needed tutors. I saw you needed some help at your football camp, and come and ask us, can they volunteer and help? So I think that's one thing that I noticed with the survey, out of the 23 responses, that nobody said there was not one person that said they considered themselves a philanthropist on their own. And I think sometimes that's because we take a step back and we want to be humble and take the credit away instead of saying, you know what, I am a philanthropist. I can pass this along. I can teach others how to give back and how to help.
Thank you. Your response actually ties into one of the questions we have from the audience. And a member asks, where does an individual go if they want to find out more about foundations and or programs that need support? Beleda, you want to tackle that one?
Sure. I mentioned earlier, I'm part of a collective giving group. It's a giving circle, and it's kind of like a book club, just a group of people with a common interest, and ours is around philanthropy and giving back. And it's called New Generation of African American Philanthropists. We periodically host forums and gatherings and workshops and engage on social media to help us all learn together. That's been one of the benefits of being part of the circle, is learning about philanthropy together. And that's an opportunity for the community as well. I'll also mention the African American Community Foundation, which is an endowed fund based at Foundation for the Carolinas. They also host a variety of programs in the community and can be a resource in helping people learn more about philanthropy, particularly institutional philanthropy, like what exists in community foundations, and some of the language and vehicles and strategy that institutional philanthropy has available to everyday individuals.
Another good resource that's actually here in Charlotte is Share Charlotte. And I don't know if anyone's heard of Share Charlotte that's on the panel, but they have over 450 plus organizations. And they have a lot of organizations that are strictly African-American organizations that focus on the Black community, where you can go to Share Charlotte and actually type in, hey, I have time to be, this tutor. I have time to be this big brother, big sister. I have time to go pick up and shop for the elderly. You can type in and find out what organization touches your heart that you want to be involved and want to help with. You can reach out and call them, and they are in Charlotte and based just to connect all of the nonprofit organizations to help us reach out and see who needs help where. And that's a great resource to be in contact with.
Right. And Kelly, I'll add to that in regard to Share Charlotte. Our Giving Circle, NGAP, has been a partner with Share over the last few months. And as a result of the collaboration, there's now a Black-led, Black benefiting filter in their database. So you actually can go there, press that filter, and identify the nearly 100 Black-led, Black benefiting nonprofits that have profiles on Share's site. So I encourage you to do that. And Share's been a great partner in that respect.
Prior to us getting on the call tonight for the Unmasked presentation, you and I were talking a little bit about another opportunity that you and your wife Felicia saw to be philanthropic and to invite others to join you. Could you talk a little bit about what that was like just a few years ago and what you all were engaged in at the time?
Well, we were engaged in Project Lift, and Project Lift really was focused on assisting bringing equity into the schools on the west side of Charlotte. And so we always hear of West Charlotte and Dove C, but it was many schools over that way who we felt were not, who a group of philanthropists felt were not really equitably funded. Felicia and I decided, well, we would help raise money within the Black community so that we can at least say we, as a community, we had skin in the game. And so we did a few of those rallies around that. Many of you all remember former Anthony Fox. He was a West Charlotte graduate, and I don't think he was the mayor at that time, but he helped us spearhead it, and Stick Williams from Duke Energy and several other people, and Tiffany, you were there as well. And so that has gone well. It has raised a lot of money. I think it's close to that $50 million thing, goal. I think our group raised about a little over $100-some thousand for it. And our model has been, I mean, although we put a lot of money into those charities, we easily have exceeded $1 million in giving to Charlotte, but a lot of it is trying to bring awareness. We know going a little long, but we do an event every year for the Gantt Center. It's just simply a great, good, feel-good party, but it brings around people who might say, I want to give, I want to contribute, I want to make things work. And so that's kind of our model, and that's how we started with Project Lift.
And so in addition to Project Lift, I know your fundraising benefits several organizations. How do you decide for whom to raise funds?
Mm-hmm. Well, we do, we work with, through the Gray Classic, primarily we work with the 100 Black Men mentoring efforts here. And then we do the Gray Holiday Party I mentioned with the Gantt Center. But throughout the year, it could be everything from, we do breast cancer happy hours, where we get the restaurant or the venue to give a percentage back to the organizations. But there's so many. Felicia went to Johnson C. Smith University. I went to A&T. We give pretty heavily back to our universities. But the thing is, Tiffany, we try to find what aligns with our brand and what we want. I mean, we're sometimes asked to give to the broader community. So many times, predominantly white organizations say, Herb, I'd like you to raise money for us. We love all people. All people matter. But we know that if we don't step up and help the Gantt Center, if we don't step up and help the Urban League, if we don't step up and help, then how can we really ask other people to do it? And many of those other communities already got a line of people giving money. I remember one time I was on the board of the Harris Y, and that Y helped the McCory Y, so I got on the Harris Y board. And I mean, in a matter of probably one afternoon, they got on the phone and raised more millions of dollars than I even knew were possible to raise in about 4 hours. And they asked me to call, get on the phone and call. And I just thought it was very interesting, right? So I realized then, and I realized many times that when you talk about philanthropic efforts, you talk about what Black people can do. A lot of times we convert some of our energies to, minority causes, particularly within the Black community. It goes so far because it is so needed.
Thank you. And Kelly, do you have a grant process for awarding dollars from the TDDF? Is that the way the philanthropy works from the foundation that you lead?
We have a donation request form that's on our website that people fill out. And we have had, like I was speaking earlier, everything you can think of dealing with community help come through with those forms. One of the main things we do is we give out scholarships to our youth. We try to start within our leadership academy, and then we also send out our scholarship information to the local high schools. And we had the kids fill out scholarship application forms where they submit an application for the scholarship as well. But with the donation request forms, they can ask for just about anything in the community that they may need, whether it's donations for food, whether it's volunteers that they need for an event, and us helping get volunteers, whether it's donations for, like I said earlier, I believe when we were talking, Tiffany, about a child needed a wheelchair. He was hurt unexpectedly, and we helped raise money for that. There was another child that needed to have surgery, and they needed a foundation to help them, get the eye surgery done for this child. There was another child that needed a van, that was handicap accessible. There were kids that needed sponsorship for their youth teams because they were at Title I schools who didn't get a lot of funding in their community and needed help for their sports team. There was a family, who lost the mom, and the kids needed things for the holidays. They needed their whole house redone. We helped them with that. There was another family whose house caught on fire and they needed things. So the list goes on, not to mention the other programs, that we do, that we pick out and do without the donation request forms. But that's pretty much what we go by. And we try to cipher through, just kind of like Herb said, are these communities, are these different asks going to be helped by somebody else? Somebody else going to be able to help them? Have they been helped before? Has this community been served by anybody before? Things like that.
Thank you for answering that question. So I'm really curious, both of you have alluded to the fact that there's community effort that needs to go into meeting the needs. And there obviously is an opportunity for you all as individuals to quote unquote meet the need. We have a question in the panel, in the chat. So how do you overcome the community mindset that you should be able to foot the bill of all of your efforts, being that you have the income to do so? How do you, and Kelly, you alluded to that in your response.
Start, and I answer next.
So me personally, when we get that question, and we get it a lot, I just start breaking down the details. This is unmasked, this is raw and real, uncut, right, everybody? So I say we have 4 kids that have to go through college. We have a huge family on both sides of my husband and I's family who we assist and we help with. 26 nieces and nephews, 10 or 15 godchildren. All of these kids are going through college and we're helping everybody. We have our foundation that we give back to, and we give back what we want to put into the foundation dollar-wise. We have tons of other organizations that we're either on the board for or we're giving back to that organization, not just our own, that we provide assistance to. So when I break down all of the stuff that we do, since somebody wants to question our coins, they shut up really quick because you don't understand all of the stuff that you do, or you see someone else do, unless you see it on TV or you see it on the news. But there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that people don't know about. And we're not a big organization like Red Cross or American Cancer Society. Nobody's coming and writing us a check for $200,000. It's not happening. We have to break it down and tell people exact needs. We have to show them exactly what we're doing. And it's like pulling teeth to get people to donate. Because of that reason, they think we have it. But once we break it down to them and let them know, like, hey, you don't know what's going on behind the scene, it's pretty smooth to try to get a donation in.
Right, Herb, your response?
Yeah, I think that one of the things I would say, and many times in our community, athletes and their families are so up on, well known and out there, and that people always look at them and say, man, I wish you could help will solve all our needs, right? And that's such an unfair burden that they have to carry. I think about billionaires, right? Warren Buffett or Bill Gates. Even within that billionaire community, they're saying, let's come together. They're not, nobody's going to ask one of them billionaires to solve all the problems, right? But many times, a few, a few African Americans who step out there and try to help out, they can kind of get burdened with, can you do more? Why are you doing more? Can you increase what you're doing? And you have to, when you find yourself in that leadership position, you have to figure out how to tactfully, work with people and explain. It's not so much I can do, but again, I assure you that the even billionaires have a limit on what they're willing to give and things like that. And so that's just that case there.
So Blada, a question for you, and you might have a window into this question and the perspective on a response, given some of the national work and even international work that you do around philanthropy. One of the questions we have is any initiative in place to bring Black megastars in Hollywood, the music industry, athletes, to develop a consortium of philanthropy to underwrite schools, job training programs, et cetera?
Yeah, I'm not aware of that, such an initiative. I know that the APFI that you mentioned earlier, the Association of Black Foundation Executives, that they had an initiative where they were working with some professional athletes and their foundations on some work, but I don't know of any kind of consortium in that way. And I would offer to people that it's an opportunity to look at our own dollars and our own philanthropy. We may not be millionaires or have access to the resources of some celebrities or professional athletes, but we can be more strategic and conscious of our giving. Many people, particularly in the nonprofit realm, are aware of the chronic underfunding that Black-led organizations experience. So it's not our imagination. It really is something that occurs, and it's been documented. So a lot of it from funders is based on bias, anti-Black bias and conscious and unconscious ideas about our community and our capacity to deliver on work, or how much they can trust us. And I think trust is built on relationships. And so when strong relationships do not exist, a lot of false ideas can be fed. And so our Black nonprofits and our communities suffer as a result. And there's some national reports out there around what's called foundation redlining. And so we're familiar with that term in the banking and housing sector. And a variation of it occurs in the nonprofit realm, where it's estimated that with the largest national foundations, that only 2% of those billions of dollars go to Black communities, and directly to Black communities and to Black-led organizations. So there's a major social justice issue at hand and a funding equity issue at hand that my giving circle and others in the community want to put more of a spotlight on and have deeper understanding and awareness, because I think a lot of people don't understand or are conscious of the insidious nature of these biases and the underfunding and the result that has, the loss of impact, how it undermines the work of Black-led nonprofits in communities, which more often than not serve on the front line and have deep relationships, as we've heard from Herb's stories and from Kelly's stories and their work in communities that many funders don't have the benefit of. So I think given that scenario and that context, it's even more of an onus on us as Black people, regardless of our means, whether you're a person of modest means, there are ways you can have impact. I think we come with some certain insights because of our proximity and relationship in community, that we can do some powerful things with so-called small dollars that millionaire, billionaire foundations don't have the know-how to do.
Right.
We are getting close to the end of our time together, and I wanted to give each of you an opportunity to make a final remark, a final comment, to give some parting words to the audience tonight around Giving Black. Kelly, I'll start with you.
I just want to say, like, to the young people that are watching or that may watch, to make sure that you really research and learn about philanthropy, and also to know that it doesn't take you having a lot of money. You can be a college student, you can be a teenager. There are ways to give back, and we need your help in our community, definitely. And like I said earlier, it's a trickle down effect. You have your younger brothers and sisters that are going to be watching you. You have your friends around you that are going to be watching you, and you can give back in ways that you probably never imagined. And then also to people who are older, who are starting foundations and nonprofits and funds, to make sure that you're very clear on where your dollars are going, so that if you're ever audited, if anyone ever comes to you, talking to you and asking you questions about what your money is being used for, that you're able to open your books and show them exactly what's going on. And I think that's hugely important in the Black community, that we're open book, showing every single thing that we're doing with the dollars that are brought in for whatever organization that we're working for.
Thank you. Herb, parting words, any thoughts you'd like to leave with the audience?
The tax on being Black moves in different ways. If you're going to raise some money and you're going to hold that money and have to dole it out, you better have some great records, because white folks and Black folks don't want to know what you did with that money, right? You better have some good records, right? So, because they're going to check on you every which way you can. But I will say that people in general are philanthropic. And I often say this, I'm going to let you go. We put we might not be the right huge checks again, but we can write a lot. Barack Obama won first term. I think he was raising $10 and still came out ahead. I mean, it doesn't take a lot, but it takes that concerted effort, right? And you don't put the burden on a few maybe to help direct you, but you look within yourself and say, if I do this and 3 of my friends or my book club, we can make a difference. And so that's what I like to look at when I think of philanthropic efforts.
Thank you, Herb. And Valeda, any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
Sure. I mean, I build on what Kelly and Herb have shared, that we have all this power. It's our superpower in our community, our natural generosity and sense of community. There's the African philosophy around Ubuntu. And so our recognition of I am because you are, and that interdependence and knowledge of it is again a strength in our community that I think we can tap on more. As evidence, even in recessions, when the philanthropy dollars show that giving declines, giving among Black people increases, which is a paradox by some standards or viewpoints. But I think if you're in the community, you get it, you understand why. It's that recognition, that interdependence, and if not by the grace of God, I could be in a similar situation. So that reciprocity that exists, those traditions are key to us. And I think something we're really going to have to lean on in this era of uncertainty. And also to remind people that this is August, Black Philanthropy Month. And our circle, NGAP, is in partnership with Share Charlotte, My Brother's Keeper, Charlotte Mecklenburg, the YMCA of Greater Charlotte, and the National Pan-Atlantic Council, Charlotte chapter, in celebrating hashtag BPM 2020 CLT. And we're having a Charlotte Gives Black Day on August 28th. You can learn more about it online. And we invite you to participate and let us show our muscle, our philanthropic muscle, on the 28th, and how we show support and give financially to help Black-led nonprofits in Charlotte.
Thank you so much, panel, for joining us tonight and sharing your words of wisdom, your insight, your humor. We appreciate you sharing the real about Black giving and giving Black. Philanthropy is not novel to the Black community. We've given when we didn't have to give. We've given more than we had to give. Our philanthropic action is another opportunity to respond to the root causes of systemic issues by funding the tackling of problems at their roots. In the 1920s, we built Rosenwald schools in response to an educational system that wasn't responsive to us. We raised funds to match the Duke Foundation to expand Good Samaritan Hospital right here in Charlotte. We did this just 60 years after the end of the Civil War. Philanthropy is activism. In this moment, while we are compelled to raise fists, we can also raise funds. When you support the Gantt Center in this program, you are involved, you are informed, you are investing in conversations like this one that lead to understanding, and understanding can lead to change. Thank you for being a part of the conversation.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. Thank you so much for your words and for leading tonight's discussion. We really appreciate you. So one of the most important aspects of our work is to inform and inspire. We hope that you were able to learn the true meaning and beauty of Black philanthropy and feel inspired to contribute and give back in your own way. To support the mission and continuance of programs such as this, please consider using our Text to Give platform. By texting Unmasked to 345-345, you give back in a way that gives a voice and uplifting perspective to your community. We thank you in advance for your contributions and for joining tonight's discussion. And be sure to tune in August 25th at 7 p.m. for our next Unmasked conversation. As always, please be safe and take care. Good night.